Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's great to be in Miami with you, among many old and new friends, and it's great also to speak to real people without having to unmute myself on Zoom. On my way to Florida, I finished Brad Lipp's inspiring book, Liberalism and the Free Society, in 2021. The rule of law is a theme that Brad discusses in several of his chapters, and I co-authored a series of English language reports on Poland's rule of law crisis, in which the ruling party has been assaulting the judiciary's independence, utilizing prosecution to achieve political ends, and breaking numerous legislative procedures. Poland's rank in major international indices such as World Justice Project, Freedom House, and Fraser Institute has deteriorated. Many organizations in Poland, including mine, work to preserve the rule of law while simultaneously considering how to restore checks and balances and implement meaningful justice system reforms. This topic is important not only for prosperity, but also for attracting new supporters to the freedom movement. Some individuals assume that classical liberalism means that there is no rule of law, predatory capitalism without any rules, they say. To draw more people to our cause, it is critical to demonstrate that many of us support a free market system within the framework of liberal democracy and the rule of law. I will be leading Civil Development Forum, a leading Polish think tank founded by Professor Leszek Balcerowicz in the new future. I started as an intern in 2010, and thanks also to help of many Atlas Network training programs, I was able to climb all the way to the position of vice president. In Civil Development Forum, we publish a lot of research papers and policy recommendations. However, we also recognize the significance of effective communication of ideas. It can be much more targeted and affordable to NGOs thanks to social media and new modern technologies. According to the opinion poll published in Poland earlier this year, support for the privatization of state-owned companies has increased dramatically, as has support for lower taxes and flat income tax. It might be interpreted as a reaction to abuses of power, government failures, and the misappropriation of public funds for political or propagandist goals. It's a fantastic opportunity for liberals, but we need to focus more resources on persuading that freedom is the best response to illiberal populist regimes. This forum is undoubtedly a place where we can improve our ability to communicate our many great ideas. I've read in Brad's book that in the US, a lot of people under 40 don't know what socialism is. And despite the relatively optimistic results of the poll I just stated, we can see similar trends in Poland, a country that has endured over 40 years of socialism. It is why we initiated the Virtual Museum of 1989, which tells the story of Poland's successful transition from socialism to free market capitalism in an engaging and creative way. Our guests can access the history of the end of socialism by immersing themselves in historical spaces reconstructed in 3D. And the project is primarily targeted at students, and it blends a cutting-edge mode of communication with a thorough historical narrative. Even if someone is drawn to the ideas offered in this virtual museum, she can still argue that it is not true socialism, because true socialism can be found in Sweden or in other Scandinavian countries. So we need to educate people about the origins of wealth in Scandinavia, which are embedded in many liberal solutions. When I personally speak to media, and I emphasize one key point: all Nordic countries rank higher than Poland in economic freedom and doing business indices. So if so many people like Scandinavian model, they must understand that for countries like Poland and many other represented in this room, it means not only more social spending, which may have different consequences outside of Scandinavia, but also more economic freedom, better protection of private property, stronger private sector, deregulation, and the rule of law. Another way to persuade young people to embrace liberalism is to underline that it is not incompatible with openness and tolerance. Despite the present government's strong anti-migrant rhetoric, Poland has had the biggest inflow of migrants in its modern history in recent years. Hundreds of years ago, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was a safe haven for religious and ethnic minorities in comparison to the rest of Europe. The Museum of History of Polish Jews in Warsaw is called Polin, which means "here you will rest" in Hebrew. Nowadays, Poland attracts many people from Ukraine, Belarus, and other parts of Eastern Europe and Asia, and classical liberals should underline the values of openness, which has brought enormous economic gains for Poland and many other countries. Not so many people are also aware of huge intolerance and of socialist regimes and thinkers. In his speech in Warsaw last week, Tom Palmer gave some examples of anti-Semitism in Karl Marx's work. There are still people who worship Che Guevara without knowing how intolerant and violent he was. The Polish movie Operation Hyacinth is now available on Netflix. It is based on a true story about the secret communist police operation to compile a national database of Polish homosexuals for the purpose of blackmailing and recruiting collaborators. Let us demonstrate to young generations that tolerance and openness can be found in classical liberalism rather than socialism. According to the research discussed in Brad's book, 86% of think tank members express very high or high satisfaction from their work in the freedom movement, and I belong to this group. So despite my departure from the Civil Development Forum, I will remain active in the movement and have already begun work as the CEO of the newly founded Economic Freedom Foundation. This new nonprofit, founded by Polish entrepreneur Arkadiusz Muś, who wants to use his business successes to boost support for classical liberal causes. So in 2020, we intend to invest more than $500,000 in grants to other NGOs, think tanks, and organizations in Poland that are working on liberal projects. And of course, Atlas Network work in giving grants to organizations is great inspiration for us. Many people in my country are willing to work to undo the bad transition, illiberal tendencies, rule of law violations, renationalizations, growing status, and rejection of many achievements of 1989 transition, and Economic Freedom Foundation wants to support them. Poland is ranked 9th in the Global Index of Economic Mentality, which assesses how much people value individual liberty, competition, and responsibility over government intervention and redistribution. And it gives me hope, and there is a lot of room for improvement in terms of free market policies, so we can move up from 75th place in the Fraser Institute's ranking of economic freedom. The Atlas Network and many Atlas partners can be a great source of inspiration for our work, so I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming panels, discussions, networking, and learning opportunities. Thank you.